Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for FourCast is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
What sort of future do you think we're heading for? How will we live as we slip into the 21st century?
Welcome to FourCast episode 45. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Scott Johnson.
And this is the podcast where we predict the future. We always bring on a couple of guests to do the predicting, and we're very happy to have two special guests. I'm very excited to talk to these folks. Dr. Amanda French, Center for History and New Media, and occasional guest on Digital Campus, as well as the writer of the excellent song, All My Internet Friends. Hey, Amanda.
Hi.
I'm very excited to have you on the show today.
I am very happy to be on. I have some podcasting experience, but this is the big leagues for me. So
yeah, well, Amanda and our other guest kind of teamed up and pitched themselves together. Our other guest is Teresa Ozoa, a.k.a. Rogue Tess. You might know her from the Twit chat room or from Twitter. She's also the co-host of Geeks on Glee, and you're a teacher too, right?
Yes, I am, and also a lapsed lawyer. So in certain cultures, I guess they would call me a doctor, but alas, not in the U.S.
So yeah, somebody said a doctor, a lawyer, an artist, and Tom. That's this. Yeah. That's this show.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I'm really excited because once again we have really, really smart people with us. I can't wait to hear what their prediction of the future is, and I have a feeling some of it may have something to do with scarves. A little pre-show nod there.
Yeah, Rogue Tess is known for her scarves. I was the lucky recipient of a scarf gift, which is an awesome scarf. So we'll keep our ears out for that. We also get predictions from listeners. You can send them along to us, fourcastpodcast@gmail.com. You can post them up at our website, fourcastpodcast.com. And Aaron was nice enough to record a video submission, our very first here at FourCast. Take it away, Aaron. He was there for a second, and then he was gone. Now he's there. Now he's back. No, he's not. There he is. Take it away, Aaron. Go, Aaron.
Hey, Scott and Tom. This is Aaron from Rockford, Illinois, just an hour and a half west of Chicago, kind of Tom's old stomping ground. And I was listening to your latest podcast. We were discussing invading Canada for water and genetically engineering blank slates that we can modify them as we wish. Kind of got me thinking, since I was listening to it at work, sweating a little bit out here in the heat, that maybe in the future we can solve two problems with one solution. Water wars commonly comes up, genetic engineering commonly comes up as your previous episode. Why don't we genetically engineer whales to ingest salt water and either regurgitate or secrete in some fashion fresh water? So we can kind of relocate and take some of that salt water that's expanding the oceans, bring it back onto dry land so that we can drink it. So, love the show. Thanks, guys. Bye.
I like this. And he titled his email Whale Wars, in which he sent the link to this.
Okay, can I just give you my initial reaction here?
Yes.
Ew.
Yes.
Yeah, I know why not. Ew is why not. Yeah.
It's pretty gross. It's pretty gross. But I mean, honestly, it's at least a stab in the direction that we need to go. And this always comes up on the show, and there's never a good solution. So I have two things to say about this. One, there's some merit, not to drop Tom's name again, but there's merit in this. Somewhere in there, there's
actually
something.
Aaron in it. But
yeah, that's true. There's more Aaron than merit. But also, Aaron is leading the charge in what I think should be a usual occurrence on the show. We would love more video questions. That is awesome. So give us more of those, folks. We'd love that.
You don't think that, if you picked up your bottle of bottled water and it said, straight from the heart of a whale secretion.
I think it's all about marketing.
Yeah.
Seriously, because isn't there some kind of coffee that is essentially some kind of rodent poop that's a bean that is poop. Really super expensive? I forget the name of it, but apparently people would pay a ton of money to drink that.
Kopi Luwak. It's a local name of an Asian palm civet, and the civets poop out the coffee.
I will say, you can have whale song tracking the commercials, and you can have a nice domain name like whalefiltration.com.
Yeah.
And it'd be gold mine for somebody.
You avoid the term secretion at all costs.
You can even personalize.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
You can even personalize these whales. I remember going to a farmer's market where they sold this amazing Parmesan cheese, and they, in fact, identified the very cows who had generated the milk that went into this particular cheese. And whales are bigger, so there's some potential.
You could adopt the whale.
There you go.
Yeah, or you could only buy whale from particular, and I only get whales from Moby. That's it. It's the only whale I drink from. Everything else just kind of tastes off to me.
Yeah,
He's
I just
my
wanted
whale.
to make a comment that a lot of what we're already drinking and a lot of the food that goes, or the water that goes into food processing is recycled water in some form or another. So some guy's nasty toothpaste water one day becomes, what you're putting in your smoothie. And we don't really think about it or know about it. And it kind of depends on the city or, the municipality and how they do water. But this happens all the time already. So the idea that a whale, this stuff, for a better term, is way better than Bill up the street, giving me his flush. In other words,
right?
So
in other words, it's treated. What Aaron is trying to say is this comes out as clean water, and maybe it still needs some treatment afterwards to make it extra clean, but it's not. It's like the astronauts drinking water that's been reclaimed from their own urine. They're not drinking their own urine. It's filtered water. It just sounds weird when you say it that way.
Yeah, and
I wonder
take
why you chose whales specifically, just because they're big and you can get a lot of quantity through them, or can you do like almost a sea sourcing, a crowd sourcing of the sea, where all of the creatures of the deep are participating in this global movement to filter water for us? That would be kind of
global movement is an awesome way to put it. But yeah, why not? Why not jellyfish? Why not fish of all kind? Why not octopi? Why not that? Why not let everybody get in on them? Why not have Aquaman directing the entire ordeal? I would love to see this happen.
Well, I think, the idea is the whale's big enough that you get a nice economy of scale going there. But giant squid would work.
Although whales have that built-in baleen. I don't know. I would buy the whole whales can filter.
Whales play well as an ecological a sort of symbol, too. Mm-hmm. They test well. All right, let's move on to our short-term predictions. These are predictions of what we think will happen in the next few years. Could be in your area of expertise, but it doesn't need to be. It can be anything you see coming soon to a universe near you. We'll start with you, Amanda French. What do you see in the short term?
So, in the year 2018, mere 8 years away, I think that books published will increase significantly in value.
We missed a bit of that sentence. Books what?
Books published in 1923 will significantly increase in value starting in the year 2018. Anybody know why the year 2018? What's due to happen in 2018? Anybody remember? All right, well, I'll explain it to you. In 1998, they passed the Copyright Extension Law, which is also known as the Sonny Bono Law, and which means that we're currently in this sort of copyright bubble where works in the published in 1923 in the U.S. Would have come into the public domain back in 1998, but because they extended it for 20 years, some say due to the influence of Disney and whatnot, nothing new, or rather old, has been coming into the public domain. However, if they don't extend the term of copyright even more, as it extended even further, then starting in 2018, those books that were originally published in 1923 in the U.S. will start going into the public domain. And my prediction is that by that time, ebooks will be common enough that, print is going to be rare anyway. And so, investing in print books now is going to be a good idea because they're only going to get more valuable and there's going to be fewer and fewer of them made. But I also think that, as Lawrence Lessig writes, putting things into the public domain actually increases their value. So I plan to buy copies of Sinclair Lewis's Babbitt and other similar texts in hopes that in the year 2018, they'll become more valuable.
I hadn't really thought about this in the age of digital everything, and we're moving away from print all the time, and some big steps, some small steps. I never really thought of it this way, but you're insinuating that for antique bookery now, you're saying in 2018 and beyond, this will see a big surge, because now we're going to be looking at something that's so antiquated that we're no longer making new anything with this technology. The only way to have books in the way that they were, or to collect them, like any other sort of ancient thing now. And you think
Absolutely.
8 years is enough for that to
print book you buy now will only increase in value, but it's specifically also that so Google Books has digitized a lot of books, and a lot of those are in the public domain. But if you go to Google Book Search and you find a really great book from 1925 and you want to read the whole thing there online, you're going to be frustrated. You won't be able to get the whole thing because of copyright. So because once people representation online, they'll actually want more to get the physical object. There will be people who will want to get the physical object. So it's not only that all printed books will start becoming more valuable, it's specifically the ones that will become more valuable.
It's specifically the ones that what?
That will go into the public domain.
Mm-hmm.
Be more valuable.
Well,
because
this
you
is
can read
really
the whole
very
thing online,
plausible.
that makes you want the printed one,
Yeah, this actually ties into my short-term prediction a little bit, but there's so many factors that go into this, including the rising cost of paper and publication. So I think generally printed books will become more valuable, but when you have all of these books now coming up on that deadline, I think I'll stand behind that.
And I will say, too, that I think some people would even disagree with me that those books will start going into the public domain in 1923 because
that was going to be my question is, do you think they'll actually extend the Copyright Act again?
They'll extend it again, exactly. So my prediction is that the free culture movement is strong enough at this point that that won't happen, which is a sort of an optimistic prediction. I'm hoping that we are actually going to start seeing stuff go into the public domain.
I know, because it's my opinion we need to reduce copyright for the benefit of the entire market rather than keep up this regulatory government intervention that continues to boost industries long past the time where they need to have that kind of intervention on their behalf. But you know what? We'll see. They got a bigger lobbyist movement than I do, that's for sure.
I agree.
Let's.
So did you guys buy antiquarian books or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I do. I like buying old books. I'm not I wouldn't call myself an expert in any way in the antiquarian because there's so much to know out there, but I dabble.
I have a J.K. Rowling autographed, let's see, which one's the third one, Prisoner of Azkaban, back right when it was published. Local bookstores. She came down to one of my local bookstores, and I got a copy.
All right, well, let's move over to you, Rogue Tess. What do you think in the short term? You kind of alluded earlier that Amanda's prediction touched on yours a little bit.
Yes, I predict this is happening already, but it'll become more popular in the next maybe 10, 20 years. I predict the demise of the traditional narrative. Now, what I mean by that is not so much the end of the book or novel, but that form being supplanted by a new form of interactive hyperlinked narrative. So like how video game players experience a game differently depending on which path they follow in the story, that's how books will be. Now, the reason that I started thinking about this was a review I read of Inception entitled "Gamers Get It, Geekers Don't," or "Geezers Don't," meaning that the generation who is used to interacting with their stories and multiple layers and different worlds just absolutely adored that movie, whereas people who were more deeply invested in a traditional narrative form maybe didn't get it as well. So what I envision is a book where a reader can select characters' choices, such as Harry Potter maybe stopping Snape from killing Dumbledore, and making that choice interactively in the book will send the reader down a certain path. Okay, how much of that got frozen?
Nothing. I just said spoiler alert.
Yeah, right.
Oh. Okay, well, I'm
Dumbledore
sorry.
dies, y'all. He does. He dies. I'm sorry.
But if you think about the trends of things like fan fiction, for example, like I adore Jane Austen, but I equally adore the book Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. And even though I love J.K. Rowling's telling of the Harry Potter saga, I like reading fan fiction that links up Harry Potter with Hermione. It's just kind of fun to imagine a different world. Different sequels and just the way people like to interact with their stories. Lost, for example, just the whole interactivity there. That's the direction I see narrative going in.
I don't think it necessarily means the decline of the traditional narrative, but sort of the marginalization of it. In other words, I see what you're predicting, and I see it as like this blooming of a whole new area of works that people will start to explore and expand their stories into. I think that's great.
This has come up before with friends of mine in conversation about what the future of video games are going to be and what that impact will have on other types of media. Reading would be one of them, and so I'm totally down with this conversation. I totally get it, but where my mind tends to wander is to very specific mechanical issues of in a video game you intervene in certain things and you create different outcomes based on your intervention in a way that is very sort of visceral and in your face. Typically, not all games, but most games. For books to do this, it would be, I mean, I guess I'm not, there's no wrong or right answer to this, but I guess I'm asking you, how do you see, for example, Snape squaring off with Dumbledore and causing a change or a difference in the outcome of that? How would you implement the mechanics of such a thing?
It would involve the creator having to imagine even more, or imagine a greater universe than they've created already. Right now, when people write, they kind of set up a world and a logic that works with the storyline that they want to tell. But I think we're going to see a different kind of artist, and this can actually work in the movies too. If you're watching something and you maybe click on something to send you into a different place visually, the creator is going to have to anticipate these paths and either tie up that loose end and bring it back to a storyline, or just like Zelda, sometimes you end up at a dead end. You know, you type here and there, and then you just don't go anywhere, and you have to go back again. I'm not exactly sure, but you know, someday when I grow up, you know, maybe I'll try to write something like this and kind of experiment with how this would actually work.
Well, I can see how this would work, I think, actually, because people are doing experiments now with essentially collaborative authoring. So our idea of the narrative is one author who figures it all out beforehand and writes it and publishes it, or even in the case of a movie, you know, plans out the whole thing and puts it out there. But what we're seeing, and you know, with the caveat that I don't think this is exactly brand new, but what we're seeing more of is readers or audiences having a big effect on what the story is, you know, and you get that even in like reality TV where, you know, people phone in and decide who gets to, you know, survive this week. And I could see that happening almost in movie theaters, right? You know, you use your smartphone and you text something or another, and based on what the whole audience thinks, the movie goes in a different direction, you know, than it would have otherwise. And similarly, even in a book, I think you could kind of, you know, press a button on your e-reader and, you know, make the story end the way you want it to, that kind of thing, or contribute your own bits to it. And even, I think, you know, it's really weird to think about collaboratively authored things that are planned that way to begin with. And a few people have done experiments like that on Twitter. You know, none of them so far have been really successful, but I think people will keep trying to get that to happen.
I think Teresa is pointing in the right direction at the gamer community and game development in general, because they've already kind of done this in so many ways. I would even point back to 20, 30 years ago when people were playing Zork. And Zork was a game that let you do that. It said, all right, you've come to a field. Here's the narrative. You've come to this field, and on the left is a turn, and on the right is a turn, and in the middle is, you know, some old sock. What do you want to do? Pick up sock. The sock smells. You put it back down. All right, well, let's go left. You go left. You don't even know what happened on the right because you didn't take it. You didn't know. And the same thing is true today with a lot of games. I've been playing again a wonderful game called Mass Effect 2, and that game has multiple endings. And depending on what you do, the developers have worked out ways to show you whole new ways of ending the thing. So the idea is already sort of happening. The question is, does that get adopted by the mainstream readership of stories, or do people just want to be told a story and don't want to do the work? I mean, there are a lot of questions like that to be answered, but I think you're absolutely right that the foundation is being laid by players and designers, and we're probably a lot closer than we think.
Yeah, I think there might be a whole new genre. Maybe not genre is the right. A whole new style, or that's not the right word either. But in other words, where it stops being a video game, where you have something that you're trying to achieve, and it's not a movie because you're involved in it. But you're sort of playing out a story, and Zork is a great example of that. We kind of got away from that when we added video back in to games.
The strictly text-based story is sort of where I was starting from. But if you look at this historically, I see we're at a place in history where narrative really is at a turning point. If you look back at Chaucer, for example, starting to write about regular people, and that they just hadn't done that before. The stories were all about saints or heroes. And then when you started writing about regular people, it engaged the audiences even more. Now, at this time, when we're engaging people as participants in the story, I think we're at a big turning point for just generally narrative. I don't think the novel will ever go away. People do want to experience a whole story that's beautifully crafted and just relive it over and over again. I can't tell you how many dozens of times I've read Pride and Prejudice, for example. And I wouldn't necessarily want to change that world.
Zombies?
Just as an aside, there's actually, zombies, but there's also a wonderful video series from BBC called Lost in Austin, where a girl somehow or another goes through the back of her bathroom and she ends up in a cabinet in the Bennett household, and she actually affects the story, and it's kind of fun. It's not super
I didn't like
great.
that. I saw that and I thought
it was okay. I love the concept of it, and I thought the main actress was charming, but yeah, it was a little bit weak. But there's that same idea of people wanting to there will be a group of people who want to experience a story that way, as opposed to how the creator first proposed it. So
will we have massively multi-reader online narrative?
Nice.
Can hardly wait.
MMR or P, something like that. Hey, the one last thing before we move on, I want to say this about this idea that's being passed around by some developer friends of mine, and that is this. If games can ever get to the point where they have interoperable code, so in other words, they become more open, they're less worried about their own engines and their own proprietary stuff, and instead they've got this stuff that is very open and very sort of interoperable, figure out a way to have people's projects mesh with each other. Imagine, if you will, this same kind of mashup mentality that you have with a game like, say, Halo, and suddenly, the Sims are walking around in your Halo universe and letting
nice.
and they're affecting that world in the way that Sims would. In other words, you mash up gameplay and you mash up story and you mash up lots of things in a way that actually happens, in a relatively easy way. There's not a lot of sort of reprogramming happening. It's all sort of accepting it and then changing based on, what is being introduced into the world. And that, if that's truly where some people are headed, and some of that tech makes it to fruition, that seems like a great, platform for what you're talking about.
Ooh, creative chaos. I love the idea.
I love that too. And I just wanted to say one more thing too, which is that I have a number of friends in academia who are willing to debate you for hours about whether or not video games are art. Is a video game a piece of art? Is it a work of art? Can a video game be an art form? And, most of the people I know will say yes, in fact. And at the very least, they're teaching them in the English departments and whatnot, teaching them for story and that kind of thing. So what I like about Tessa's prediction, and yours too, Scott, is that it the things start to happen. Then you'll get wider societal consensus that, yes, video games are art. It's an art form.
Yeah, we just don't want to admit that yet because we live in the now, and now it seems weird and crazy and cutting edge and for the kids. But tell that to people who introduced TV in the early 50s and said that this was a ridiculous box with no artistic merit. And I would argue there are plenty of artistic efforts happening on TV these days. And You could say the same thing for film. And the advent of technology in cultural mediums like this always gets frowned upon by whatever the old men are in the suits at the time. And that all changes. You know, in 50 years, video games will be art, and no one will remember this conversation. You know, it'll be a whole new world. So, yeah, I'm with you 100%.
In the rear with the Roy's Fuenische.
I'm so glad we got the Simlish.
All right, let's move on to our long-term predictions. These are long-term sci-fi, weird, strange, turning world upside down predictions for, I don't know, 100 or more years. We'll stay with you, Rogue Tess. What do you got for us?
Okay, I predict within 200 to 500 years or so, in any case, over multiple generations, that people will evolve to cultivate mental skills as well as physical skills. So things like telling the future or telekinesis or mind reading or ESP, that's not all going to be just cable channel fodder. People will actually have jobs where they get paid to do this. And this what prompted this idea was some toy, I forget the details now, where you can levitate a ball just with mind power, wearing some kind of a little head thing. I don't know. And I just thought if that starts out as a game, eventually, if people value it, if they cultivate it, if people who have those skills self-select and mate with each other, then we're going to have people who actually will have those skills, and they'll be accepted, just like people who have perfect pitch or, you know, who are really good basketball players have specific jobs. So that's my prediction.
You know, the toy you're talking about worked by reading brain waves. You didn't actually have to have any special skill, but what you're suggesting is that these sort of the ability to levitate that ball without the device reading your brain waves will come out. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I've long argued on this show and in my life for I vote for mutation. I'm excited for us to be selectively changed into something different and better, and I want to have skills that today would seem crazy. And I want to have those to be able to, you know, sort of explore new aspects of humanity that we're currently limited, you know, and not being able to explore. And you echo a lot of the thoughts of a lot of guests on the show before. Do you have any specifics, like super specific examples of the kinds of things you'd like to see have happen in those mental skills?
No, I really haven't thought that much outside the box or beyond some of the science fiction that I've read. But one of my favorite children's series had to do, let's see, I think the book was called Enchantress from the Stars, but it had to do with this master culture that kind of intervened when these youngling planets would try to take over others and not allow them to develop naturally. And this youngling culture was all science oriented, and the only way that the kind of caretaker race could get rid of them from this one planet was to send in their master people disguised as the locals to do things like telekinesis to scare off the science-minded planet or culture, because they would think, wow, this planet is weirder than we thought. We don't understand it. We're just going to let them alone. So I can't remember some of the specific skills they had, but I love the idea that that our civilization is immature in only believing what we can see and prove and touch, and not valuing as much mental skills. So I don't know. I really haven't thought specifically about what I'd like those to be, other than, you know, reading minds, etc. But I think that would be fun.
Solving crossword puzzles really fast. I think we're going to evolve that skill.
Yeah, we need genetic selection for that. Yeah, I needed to find a good mate for that. And
well, solving crosswords needs to become sexier then.
Right.
It's pretty sexy. I don't know. Yeah.
We would solve a lot of the world's problems, or maybe create a whole bunch of new ones, if we suddenly could just read each other's minds. I've always thought, like, everyone's full of crap, right? Like, we're just all thinking stuff that nobody else wants to know we're thinking about. And the minute that all gets opened up, because everybody can read each other's minds, we will all suddenly just be laid naked and on the most level playing field, you know, possible. We'll know of a terrible thought the Pope has. At the same time, we'll hear of a wonderful thought that some guy who just robbed the bank has. And, you know, we'll just constantly be reminded that we all think very different things that are actually the truth, and the truth will set us all free. So I think that would be awesome if we could just.
Facebook will get in a lot of privacy violation trouble. Can you? I mean, you think about it, like with social networking, the amount of controversy that's caused over the information that we voluntarily divulge, but we only want to divulge it in this place and not in that place. If you could read everybody's mind and involuntarily every thought you had, forget it. It's all over.
There's an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where she suddenly acquires the ability to read everybody's mind. And what she finds is that everybody is really self-involved. And so I think it'll be like that.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, Tosh does that in an episode of Torchwood, too. She does it with the help of a device, and she finally just gives up the device. A little too much information.
Yeah, I remember that episode. And, of course, Sookie Stackhouse, one of the more famous fictional characters that can read everybody's minds, which was why she likes hanging around with vampires, because she can't read their mind. Mm-hmm. So I think there is a lot of literature, if you can call television shows literature loosely, about how, you know what, if we could read everyone's minds, we wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what would happen, though? The kind of mind reading that we would need is not the kind that would go archival and look at everything you used to think or that you have stored in your memory, because that would be bad. But what would be good is if we all suddenly could read each other's minds at the moment of perception, because what we'd end up doing is just burning out, because everybody would just suddenly know that everyone else knows that everyone can hear each other thinking what they're thinking, which is what everyone else knows. It would create this.
We've got information overload problems, you know.
It'd be bad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's turn to you, Amanda. What is your long-term prediction when you look down the road 100 years or more? What do you got?
I have a really sad prediction. I think that public libraries, as we know them, will be gone in 50 to 100 years. And I hate to say that because I love public libraries, but to my mind, public libraries serve about three functions. First of all, they're as a physical space, they're a community center, and they provide free computers for one thing, and classes and places for you to bring your kids, and if you're homeless, you know, it gives you a place to sack out and all those sorts of things. But the other two things that public libraries do for you is they give you free entertainment. They give you, you know, free books and even, you know, DVDs and things like that that you can borrow for a little while. And basically, because of the move to electronic forms of all of these, that's going to really go away, because I'll just say what the third function of libraries is. The third function of public libraries is supposed to be this, you know, that there are people there who know how to do research. You know, there's librarians who sit at the reference desk, and the New York Public Library used to have, you know, you could call them up and, you know, ask them for arcane information about, you know, baseball statistics from 1923 if you didn't happen to have that book lying around, and they would tell you that. Well, right now everybody Googles that, right? So even though people at least think they can find all the arcane information that they need, even when they actually can't, you know, they think they've been successful. So, but the thing about the free entertainment, you know, free books and whatnot, at least for a little while, is that with ebook, I mean, we see with ebook readers, there's no way to lend things. And, you know, Amazon really, it's not like Amazon has special library accounts where, you know, some county library can pay $5.36 for an e-copy of some book and then share that with all the people in the county. That's just not happening, and I don't think it's going to happen.
Although some libraries have bought Kindles and loaned them out preloaded with
right.
books, but that's about the best you can get, right?
That's right. So, you know, the only hope that libraries, you know, public libraries have for survival is as a physical space, you know, to say, hey, this is the place where you can come in and get the Kindle that has some stuff on it. This is the, you know, place where you can come in and, you know, hang out and work and use computers if you don't have them. But I think it's going to be really touch and go, because we've seen that a lot of public libraries have been having their budget slashed recently.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think maybe they don't go away entirely as a physical space, but they change into public information access, like a big computer lab, essentially, versus a storehouse and a place to sit and read. And I don't know, maybe they become more of like a public version of a coffee shop, where you don't have to buy the coffee.
I was going to make that comparison, actually, because I've noticed that when I go to a Barnes & Noble, we have a huge one here near me that we go to all the time, that basically has become many people's public library. Like there are many people that aren't buying a thing. They're just sitting around in those lounge chairs they provide, and they have coffee shops built into them, and they're sitting around reading stuff that they just pulled off the shelf in a way that I remember people doing that at the library. And I go down to the library and there's nobody there. So I wonder if we haven't turned some of these retail spaces into such welcoming, sort of relaxing places that it's usurping the traditional role of a library in a meaningful way.
I think MN7 in the chat room hit on it. Libraries need to start selling really good coffee.
Yeah, there are still some that won't let you bring your coffee in, let alone sell it, which drives me nuts. It's like, you can check the book out and take it home and spill coffee on it. How come I can't have my coffee in the library, But,
I think it depends a little bit on where these libraries are physically located. For example, I live in the suburbs, and libraries are used a lot by latchkey kids, hang out there before their parents come home. And also, as community gathering places, there are a lot of groups, tutors, people I know who do tutoring will meet at a carrel in a public library. And so that third function that you talk about, I see as not just as a people place for reference, but a people place for community, whether it's kids listening to a story or whatever. So I don't know. I don't think that they'll completely disappear. They may morph into community centers as the physical books go away, but you're right. It's kind of a sad idea.
Yeah, I do think, as I said, that the physical space is their hope for survival. Because the thing about ebooks is like, yes, if you're a library, you can loan out a Kindle, but the whole point of an ebook is that, if you've got a Kindle or if you've got your phone or whatever, you can get it right away if you're buying it, and they are at least potentially cheaper than the book was. But the thing is that publishers are not selling ebooks to libraries, for the purpose of distributing them. With a physical book, you could do that. You could. As a library, you can pay the same price as an individual and sort of amortize the cost of that over a whole bunch of people. But you can't do that with ebooks electronically because they put all kinds of regulations on it. It's very easy technically to do, obviously, or if you're a library, you can get a little e-thing and make a bunch of copies of it and distribute it, but, that would be illegal.
Violation.
Or the violation of their terms of service. So the best they can do is buy that electronic copy and have you come in to get it, which in a world where ebooks are really common and really cheap, probably won't happen.
All right, well, let's move on then to the crazy-ass predictions. They could be 10,000 years in the future. They could be in an entirely different universe. They could just be something that you just think is almost impossible to conceive within the human mind. But whatever it is, I hope it's a doozy. And we'll stick with you, Amanda. What is your crazy prediction?
I don't know. Mine might be too crazy. I don't know. It's just like this crazy,
Nothing is too crazy.
I'm a little scared here to make this prediction, but I'm going to predict that the human race will, over the course of tens of thousands of years, evolve to the point where people no longer make spelling mistakes or typos. I know it's crazy. I know.
I'm glad you put it in the crazy predictions section because that's definitely where it belongs.
But let me explain why. I think that people will no longer make spelling mistakes or typos because all human languages will eventually converge and become one big language, probably kind of English-based. But by all languages, I also mean computer languages. So you'll have this mammoth human language on the planet that will be mostly English-based, but will also include parts of, German, French, and Bantu, but also C++ and PHP, and Lisp and all of these things. They'll all converge into one enormous language, and our brains will expand to be able to handle a much bigger vocabulary than they currently do. And so we'll use the same language to program computers as we will to talk to our children, so that when you tell your child, clean your room, it'll actually function as a sort of if you do it with the right syntax, it will make your child actually clean their room. So, just as in, you can't make a spelling mistake or a typo in a computer language. You sort of either won't be able to do that, when speaking or writing, if they're still writing. But if you do, it will be, just sort of shocking. It will be like public nudity or something. It will be just not done.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say, if I could tack a hope onto this prediction, and we've had similar predictions in the past dealing with languages, where they would converge, what would be the dominant one. Everyone talks about Firefly and Chinese and English somehow mixing and all this other kind of stuff. One thing nobody's ever brought up, and I kind of wish somebody would be, what if we got to a future where typos didn't happen because we quit caring about them? In other words, when Tom sends me a letter that says, hey, meet me for dinner, email or text.
Because I'm always mailing you letters about meeting for dinner.
That's really weird. But let's say I get a message like that from him, and I see that, and that's fine, and all of it's misspelled. He spelled, let's meet for dinner, and dinner's got 2 R's and a Q for some reason. But in the end, I know exactly what Tom's telling me. I know exactly what he wants and where we need.
And we've gone from a situation where spelling was not formalized. If you look at old documents from the 1700s, you see all kinds of alternative spellings and people spelling things in different ways. And we've only formalized it recently relative to the history of humanity. So you think this is a temporary thing? It's a blip?
Absolutely, and I think you're right, Scott. I mean, it's going to get worse if it's a bad thing, which I don't think it is, before it gets better. And I think you're absolutely right that in the shorter term, in the 50 to 100-year range, people are going to start caring a whole lot less, have already started caring a lot less about spelling errors, grammatical errors, typos, that kind of thing. And that's partly because we're all just communicating a lot more through writing. I actually am old enough to remember when, email took off. And everybody who was a composition teacher was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing because all the kids are writing now, and they never used to write letters, and now they're writing. And for various reasons, we've all just learned to care a lot more about that. But eventually, because of the convergence of all languages, including computer languages, we will no longer, our capacity for language will expand so much, and the uses we have for language will be so precise that we will evolve, toward a standard that we will all be fully capable of reproducing.
Now, Chris Christensen, who does the Amateur Traveler podcast, wrote into the show already from a previous show where someone suggested this idea of the coalition of languages. Here's what he says. I think this discussion about all the languages in the world coalescing into one language is a particularly monoglot view of the world. In polyglot places like Tanzania, where you study for the first 4 years in your tribal language, the next 4 in Swahili, and the final 4 in English, this view might seem silly. Why would someone only want to know one language?
Well, they make a good point, but if you're asking me, why would I want to know just one? Because if that is all you need, in other words, if the world is there for this monster language that we're talking about now, and I know that language, I don't know why I'd want, other than sort of cultural antiquity and like, oh yeah, isn't it great that we all know this 3rd, 4th language? Well, if it's not really truly functional, I don't know why I would want that.
I'm sitting here in a bit of a quandary because I love the idea of universally clear communication ultimately, but I just don't think people can do it. Just as my daughter just got back from a trip with some kids from the East Coast. I live on the West Coast, and she said there were times when their slang just didn't overlap. Like, I can't even remember the term she was using, but something was meant to be bling, but it was so I think humans just have this need to kind of make clicks or to be special, or to kids even to separate from the adults and just be mysterious in developing their own languages. So politically, I think we're always going to have some kind of reason to keep our own little languages, even if they're just slang. So I'm a little skeptical because of human nature, although I really like the idea.
We can develop mind-reading powers, but we can't develop no typo powers?
That's right, because it's still all about, all about keeping secrets and, being part of the group. And
well, but new words develop all the time. And I don't know that this is true, but it feels like people are developing new words. I mean, even just to name Web 2.0 services, people are inventing new words and brands and things all the time. And, the kids with their slang today and all that. But as I say, I think we're all going to develop much greater verbal capacities than we currently have. So this one monoglot language will not be the size of English. Mm-hmm. It'll be, 5 times as big as English. So you could, at that point, it's a question of semantics. Does that count as knowing 5 languages, or does that, count as knowing 1?
It'll be a cromulent language, is what you're saying.
Perfectly cromulent.
Yeah.
Cool.
I will take your word for it.
All right, let's move over to you, Rogue Tess. What do you got in your crazy prediction when you're looking 10,000 years in the future, or off into the far, far distant realms of existence? What do you see?
Okay, looking into the future, I predict that there won't really be one. I predict that time will cease to be linear. And what I mean by that, let's see, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Deja Vu with Denzel Washington, where they built this machine where they could look into the past, like a specific time, like 3 years into the past or 3 months or whatever it was, and see what was going on in the past from the present. And it turned out that the machine actually allowed them to jump into that past also and change it around. Now, I envision a future in which people are doing this all the time, that they're jumping from the past or from the present into their past, or they are placing themselves in some form of suspended animation so they could travel, 15 years and then get out at another planet and they're still the same age. So generations will be irrelevant because people will be on all these different timelines. So now, of course, and that's the reason I sent you the article, there's always that issue with time travel of the grandfather paradox, which is, what if you went back in time and killed your grandfather? Then, you wouldn't be able to, that would end your own timeline. Apparently there's some principle in physics that reduces the probability of that ever happening, and so therefore it's not a paradox anymore. But in my prediction, people would, what would happen is kind of like the new Star Trek canon. Something happened that then changed everything into this new flow or this new timeline. And if people jump and change it again, fine, it'll change again, and there'll just be a different present based on people jumping around. So there'll be all this overlap of past and present, and the only memories people will have will be the memory of that current timeline. It's not like you jump in and you remember what the past was in the other timeline. You're now in the new timeline.
Which timeline has spelling errors in it?
Well, there will probably be a couple of them, but Amanda
Can I
French
go back in time and correct
there you
my
go,
spelling?
and you influence that.
That's how we get rid of the spelling errors, because everybody just goes back in time and corrects them.
But one of your other guests, I think it was Zadi, who talked about, I think, Tom, you actually coined the term augmented archaeology, where you could look at a space and see what was happening in different eras in that same space. There's actually a website which has some photographs where they've superimposed pictures like that onto the same physical space. And I love that idea that all of these things can kind of sit on top of each other and that there can be different timelines. So anyway, there it is. No more future.
What's interesting is we got an email from Drew recently who said you were talking about traveling back in time and killing Hitler on a previous episode, and it reminded me of a funny story I read about how if time travel is ever invented, it would essentially turn human history into a wiki. The story is told in the form of a forum in which board moderators have to keep preventing noobs from killing Hitler, since so much of our history and technology comes from World War II.
See, I don't think that would be a problem because, and like you, Amanda, this idea of being on the show has sparked a lot of conversation in my household. My husband has this theory of the inevitability of certain events, things like developing steam power or electricity or space travel. There will be certain things that are going to develop regardless of whether Hitler was alive or not. Just the timing would change. So that's not a problem in my world.
Just kill all the Hitlers you want. We'll make more.
Somehow, World War II inventions will still happen.
Well, the way that this works is the timelines go off independently after you change them. So you can't, for example, if you just kept looping back to kill Hitler, that is technically what you'd be doing. Your person, your individual, whoever you are, would just keep coming back from 2010 and killing Hitler over and over and over. The cycle would continue. So to make this work for me, this would have to start a new timeline. The one where Hitler's still alive exists and is going, and the one where you killed him is now going, and the one where you tripped and fell on a rock and died before you got to him is still going, and the one where your plane went down before you got to the rock is still going. So possible potential things that happen on your way to Hitler. Sounds like a stage show.
A funny thing happened on the way to killing Hitler.
I mean, all of those things are happening. So the theory being, and I've heard this a million times, and there's no way to prove any of this, but the theory to me would be a sound one, which is this all happens, and right now I'm saying the word hello on this show, but in another timeline I said the word rat poop or something, and a whole different path opened up, and I'm going down the path with a million other choices that create a million other timelines. And to me, that's when time travel works. Without that, it doesn't ever work for me. It always breaks down.
So where do you end up on that, though? Do you end up only in the one world that you pick, or are you simultaneously existing in all of those different paths? You would
exist in all of them. I remember an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation where Riker shows up in this piece of space where there's this anomaly, and all these other enterprises show up, and some of them have Picard in charge, and some of them are Captain Riker, and one is like hobo Riker with a beard who's looks freaked out, and everybody's dead on the ship but him, and he's been fighting the Borg. And the idea that those are your multiple selves all on these different timelines has sway for me. For some reason, at the very least, obviously I know nothing about it, but at the very least, I like the idea that there's many me's living these different choices and options. There's a ton of me that were dead by 18, and there's a ton of me that'll live 90, and there's a whole bunch that'll live to 55 and go to the moon, and then there's a couple that'll die tomorrow, and
there's one named John Scottson.
Right. Doing a show called FourCast because that made more sense or something or whatever. There's all of this happening, and that intrigues the heck out of me. I love that idea.
All right, it's time for 4 questions. This is the segment where we hit each of our guests rapid fire style with 4 questions about the future. You, as guests, are not allowed to stop and think, but just tap into that communal energy of the space-time continuum and answer from the gut, giving us, if not a more accurate prediction, at least a highly entertaining one.
I'm going to go first. Dr. Amanda French, are you sitting comfortably?
I'm a little too comfortable.
Perfect. That's just like we like you. Here you go. Here are your 4 questions. We'll start with, if you could travel to a planet in another galaxy, what would you tweet when you got there?
OMG, I am on another planet in another galaxy.
Hashtag explore.
Yeah, exactly. If the world were destroyed, leaving you and a few others to repopulate the Earth, and you knew all 7 languages fluently, or knew 7 languages fluently, which one would you decide to use moving forward? Which is oddly appropriate for your other. Anyway.
Yeah, I would use the languageopolis, the language.
You would combine Spanish and English just by putting L in front of everything. That would be good.
That's right.
Franglenderin.
If there's one modern poet that is alive today that you'd like to see in charge of saying some final words just before the zombies break through the perimeter, who would it be?
Oh gosh, alive today is the sticker for me. My field is 19th century technically, but probably saying that before the zombies break through. Oh
yeah, you could bring somebody back through a timeline phase shift or something.
Can I do that?
Yeah.
Dylan Thomas.
Ooh, nice choice.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the human light, because the zombies are, it's going to be the zombie light if we're not.
Do not go gentle into that. Don't even go out there. Keep the door closed, for God's sake.
Not even poetic anymore. He's just saying stuff. I am infinitely glad I asked that question. Final question in the 4 Fast Fire questions is this. If men are from Mars and women are from Venus, what will be our future unisex hybrids be, or where will they be from?
Pluto, the planet that is no longer a planet, because they will no longer be from anywhere specific.
I like that. That is to the ambiguous planet that nobody can decide what the heck it is. Brilliant. That's an awesome
I think
choice.
there's a whole genre of Pluto porn out there that probably already exists.
Probably. As we speak now, there's this stuff cropping up on the internet right now.
Plutonians.
Nice work, though. That was great.
Yeah, well done. All right. Rogue Tess, a.k.a. Teresa Ozoa, are you sitting comfortably?
Well, I am, but if I stand with on one leg with my hands in the Junior Birdman position, can I still answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
Then we'll begin. Question number 1. How many seasons will Glee last?
Oh, let's see. Infinitely, since there are going to be infinite variations and timelines in the future, and it'll be like 90210 when, let's see, when what's her name? Quinn will have not yet graduated from high school because she has multiple children, and Arnie will actually walk.
Wow.
So how many seasons?
Infinite. Is that a number?
Oh, infinite. Okay, good.
Okay.
Good. Question number 2. Will copyright law ever ease up on the knitting industry?
Oh, it won't matter because the knitting gorillas will go ahead and defy any kind of knitting police that are out there anyway.
Fight the knitting power.
All I can do is I can picture just a big throng of gorillas knitting things. That is a great.
Yeah, there are actually knitting gorillas who go out and cover parking meters and lampposts and all kinds of things with awesome knitting. So
do they wear gorilla suits?
Yeah, are we still talking about primates here, or are we talking about real people?
No, see, that's the importance of spelling. All right, GUE.
That's right. That's right. Question number 3. In the year 3025, when Richard Nixon is reconstituted from remaining DNA, will he finally admit what the crap he knew and when he knew it?
Oh, no. He will ever proclaim that he was not a crook. So, therefore, sorry, not going to happen.
I'm a reconstituted crook. And question number 4. Robots, zombies, or bodiless entities, who wins in the end?
Oh my gosh, let's see here. Okay, 42. I can't decide.
You were saving that card just in case, right? You can't pick robot, zombies, or bodiless entities, huh?
Oh man, I've loved zombies though, and robots are kind of fun. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, you know what? I think the robots will probably win it for me. Yeah, because I can. I feel like I can control them a little more than zombies.
I think that makes sense too, because the robots won't fall to the zombies, because the zombies bite them. Who cares? They're robots, right? It doesn't do anything. The bodiless entities just kind of float away, and they're not a threat anymore. Robots win. I think you're right.
And in the case of the bodiless entities, they don't have a body of any kind, so they don't even really float away. We don't know what the hell they're doing.
They don't know where they are.
Yeah, robots win.
They can't rule anything. Not without a body.
How about for the poets? I think the poets win. With the power of language.
Robot poets, zombie poets, or bodiless poets, though. It just begs the question, Amanda.
Oh, you're right. You're right. You got me.
You guys, I'm sorry this is over. This was really fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Tons of geeky fun.
You guys are naturals. You're talking about how you haven't done that many podcasts. This was awesome. It's like you've been doing it all your life. I want to have you back now.
You can't. I'm sorry. There will be no time in the future, and therefore we will be unable to come back.
It is sad. It is sad but true. Well, Amanda French, thank you so much for joining us. Let people know where they can find the stuff that you do, where they can find it on the internet.
You can find my blog at amandafrench.net. You can find my free MP3 song about the internet at allmyinternetfriends.com. I recently put up my back catalog as well, which is much less internet-oriented, but nevertheless, you can do that. I am an irregular on a really great podcast about the effect of technology on higher education called Digital Campus. You can find that at digitalcampus.tv. And just a little plug I'd like to give as well. I put in a panel proposal for South by Southwest called Infinite Jest and the Internet, which is talking about David Foster Wallace's mammoth work of postmodern fiction, Infinite Jest. And it's got a great panel of experts who's agreed to be on it, including somebody you might know, Tom, Molly Wood.
I've heard of her. She's a smart girl.
Yeah. And she's read Infinite Jest. So.
Yes, that's true. I know. I remember while she was reading it, hearing all the updates.
That's right. So, and she's not the only fabulous person on that panel. So if you're at all interested in hearing that at South by Southwest, do go and go to the panel picker and search for that and vote for it.
Excellent. Vote Amanda and vote Mutation. And thank you, Teresa Ozoa. I can't call you anything but Rogue Tess. Thanks for being on the show. Let people know where they can find you on the internet.
Well, very easily on Twitter at Rogue Tess. I'm a co-host of a podcast about Glee called geeksonglee.com with Eileen Rivera, Twit's own, Tom's own, Eileen Rivera, and Nicole Lee of CNET. It's a lot of fun, and that's basically my only real presence out there on the internet other than just being kind of a fan.
Well, you got a Twitter account.
Yeah.
Plus a small correction, Tom is Eileen's own Tom.
That's a good point,
okay.
Yeah. I'm definitely Mr. Rivera.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you both for being on FourCast. Scott, any last business we need to take care of before we head out?
Negative, my friend. It's just been an awesome episode. Really grateful for these guests and everyone who helps make this show really something special every Monday. And big thanks to the chat room and to Jammer B for running the boards for us tonight. It has been a great time as usual.
Don't forget to leave comments on our website, fourcastpodcast.com. You can send us an email, fourcastpodcast@gmail.com. That's the email to use. If you want to send us a link to your video, we'll see you in the future.
Tell me it's 32 years away.
You could make a Jane Hat scarf to go with the Jane Hat. What?
That's awesome.
That looks really good, Bob or Doug McKenzie. You look really good there. That is awesome. Someone in the chat room, please cap that.
Tell me it's 32 years away.